One of the things that has stood out to me during this offseason so far is that Chargers star quarterback Justin Herbert seems to be having more fun, and I think a fun Justin Herbert could be the best version we've seen yet.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, to the everydayers out there that make us your first listen. And to make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, Justin Herbert has never been a fan of the cameras. He is not a guy that likes to go out and be very outspoken, but this seems like a very different Justin Herbert this year. Getting on stage, singing, being more upfront, more friendly with the media. This is a different version of Justin Herbert, and I think the best version of Justin Herbert. And is this Charger schedule more difficult than we think it is? I don't know. That's going to be a great question. And do the Chargers have a top 5 position group? That's going to be a great question.
Yeah, it is our Chargers buy or sell today, getting into the biggest storylines and overreactions, and we have a lot to get to, but today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. David, I love getting into our buy or sell shows, and today I wanted to start with one that had been kind of on my mind for a couple of weeks, and I think today's the right time to pull it out because it is such a hard thing to quantify. So today's buy or sell is this: the best version of Justin Herbert is the version that is having fun. Are you buying or selling that?
I'm buying it 1,000%. I mean, Justin Herbert is one of the rarest athletes on the planet of Earth. Okay. He is truly phenomenal in everything that he is capable of doing. And this year in particular, he's smiling more. He's joking with the media more. He's going to concerts with his teammates, singing on stage, which is something we would have never expected to see. And Justin Herbert is incredibly talented. So when he's out there and he's showing emotion and he's having a good time, like that right there, I feel like is the absolute best version of Justin Herbert. And he needs to have a little bit more swag, a little bit more of that confidence because he can do things that nobody else on the planet can do. And it's okay to showcase that ability and celebrate that ability as well.
Yeah, and I think, kind of what you're going for there is like, hey, because I think the big thing is this. How does off the field, what we're seeing right now, translate to on the field success, right? Because I agree with you. I'd never thought we'd see him get up at a country concert and start, screaming into the microphone. I didn't see that one coming. And I also didn't see that, Justin Herbert at a charity golf tournament actually asking if there were cameras rolling, right? We're talking about a dude who dressed up as the punter to make sure the cameras couldn't get him, right? Literally tried to avoid cameras at all costs. Then he hits a nice shot on the golf course. He's like, hey, are the cameras rolling? They're rolling,
That's Jim Harbaugh was like, are the
totally
cameras
awesome to see him actually look for that and search that out, So I just think it's really, really nice to see. But as far as on the field goes, I just think that he won't press as much. Like, that's my biggest thing, is just not feeling like he has to play Superman, not feeling the kind of stress every week that if he doesn't put the team on his back, that they're just not going to be able to win. And I'm sure in the first year of Jim Harbaugh, there's still going to be a fair amount of the Chargers asking Justin Herbert to go win them football games. I mean, that's just going to happen. But I do think that we saw what happened with Phillip Rivers. Like, Phillip Rivers played within himself early on in his career, right?
Yeah.
He had a super stacked roster around him, and he knew he just had to do what he had to do, when they called upon him. Later in Phillip Rivers' career, at the end of the A.J. Smith era, as it turned to the Tom Telesco era, and he started having less talented groups around him, we saw that kind of hero mode Phillip Rivers that we saw and loved, right? Phillip Rivers was a gunslinger at heart. He was always going to do that to a certain extent, but when you look at, the first 5 seasons or so that he actually started, right, because he sat for 2 years, you see stat lines, right, that are there that might not be as glossy, but it was way less interceptions, right? It was less kind of game impacting throws that we saw late in the career of Phillip Rivers, where it was just throw it up and Mike Williams is down there somewhere, right? That's what we saw.
Right.
And I think with Justin Herbert, we started to see that a little bit. I feel like you saw him pressing at the end of games. I think you saw him trying to potentially do too much. And I also just think that Justin Herbert is a perfectionist by nature. Every person you hear talk about him is actually talking about him like that. If he can laugh some of these things off, right, I think that'll help. And I just think that it won't put as much stress on him. And I think that's been the whole kind of game plan of what this new regime is trying to do. So let's get to the next buy or sell here, which is from Drotalk SD on Twitter, who says this: buy or sell, Justin Herbert will have the fewest passing attempts of his career this season. So I think as a total, you have to throw out last season if you're just looking at the total attempts. But David, what do you think here? Are you buying or are you selling that?
Yeah, so just for some context here, the first 3 seasons are his 3 healthiest seasons. He averaged 39.6 passing attempts, 39.5 passing attempts, and then 41.1 passing attempts the last 3 seasons. And then just to give context for pass against run, 595 to 466, 672 to 423, 699 to 404 pass attempts to rush attempts. I think that's going to be a lot closer to even here under Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman. And so I am definitely going to buy that it will be his lowest passing attempts. And I think it's for a good reason. It's less stress on Justin Herbert. We were just talking about how a fun-loving Justin Herbert is the best version of it. I think that him not having to have the entire weight of the world on his shoulders to have to do everything is also going to allow him to play more free and be happier and have more fun, because he's not going to have to do all of the work on his own. He's going to have a running game that he'll be able to rely on, that he'll be able to help give the ball to help close out football games. And I think you're going to see a much more efficient version of Justin Herbert because of it.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're going to just do the averages, I mean, you could use last season, right? I was talking about total attempts. You can go on average. Last season was his lowest. It was 36.6. Yeah. So, like, if you're going on a per-game basis, you could do it that way, right? Because you're not missing the last 4 games, so the total attempts won't be messed up. But I think even 36.6, which is the lowest, I still buy that it'll be under that. And I don't think it'll be ridiculous, but I think it'll be closer to 34 or 35. And I think another big part of this is going to have to do with how good the Chargers are. Because, when you're throwing a lot, when you're down late in games, and hopefully behind, the Chargers are in a better position where not only if they're up late in games, they still feel like they have to throw the football because they have no running game, but also that they'll be behind in less fourth quarters so that they can focus more on running the football and not needing him to go save them late in games where it's just him throwing it first through fourth down and you know exactly what's coming. So we do have a bold prediction of sorts on this buy or sell from Athir. I want to hear what he has to say about week 1.
Dan, David, this is Athir. Buy or sell Wednesday. Justin Herbert will throw for over 350 yards and 3 touchdowns in week 1 versus the Raiders. Greg Roman will remind everybody why he has Justin Herbert. I'm buying it. What says you? Thank you. Love you.
David, are you buying or selling that?
Yeah, I'm going to sell it. Justin Herbert, in his career against the Raiders, is 4-3, has a great touchdown to interception ratio, 15-2, but he's only thrown for over 350 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Raiders 1 time. And of course, I'm sure we all remember what game that was. Yeah. That was the crazy January game where it was win and get into the playoffs.
Week 18, 2021.
Right, through 4th down after 4th down after touchdown after touchdown. I don't think that's the style of offense that we are going to see when the Chargers go up against the Raiders. It's just not what they're going for. I would love to see it. Obviously, that would be fantastic. But I think it's going to be a little bit more of the rushing attempts, a little bit less of the passing attempts. I think it'll be a great, efficient game for Justin Herbert. But I don't foresee 350 and 3 touchdowns. Not out of the gate.
Athir, I love you, and I know you say I never buy your buy or sells, and I'm upsetting. I'm going to go with you. I'm going to buy it. First of all, just, for, I think, the hilarity of it, it's just like the entire offseason you talk about running the football, and then you just go out there in week 1 in a revenge game from the 63-21 blowout and just light them up for 350 yards.
I love
350 yards is a lot. That's a hard thing to do if you're throwing the ball less. I just said he's going to have the least passing attempts. Athir, I'm going to go with you, my baby. I'm going to say that he's going to do it week 1 and shock everyone. And Greg Roman, I think he does want to kind of show people, hey, we're going to throw the football a little bit too. And I also just think, they added Christian Wilkins to their front. Their front is better than what their secondary looks like. I do think they have more question marks there. But we still have more great stuff to get into, including why I think the schedule might be a little bit tougher than Chargers fans might think when they just see, hey, they have the 5th easiest schedule in the league in 2024, and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, ref racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Let's continue this Chargers buy or sell, getting into the biggest storylines and overreactions. And thank you to everyone who hit us up at Locked On LAC, and guys like Atir, who called into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. But let's get into this next one here. It's a good one, and it's from Scott, who says, buy or sell, the Chargers schedule is actually tougher than people think. All 4 teams in the AFC North will not be easy. Kansas City twice, have not won in Denver since 2018, which is crazy. Usually split with Las Vegas. Tampa Bay and New Orleans are sneaky good. New England late in the year could be bad weather, and the AFC has an extra road game. So David, are you buying or selling that the Chargers schedule is actually tougher than people think?
No, I'm not buying it. I'm selling it because the losses to Denver and Las Vegas, to me, for the most part, was not due to subpar talent. It was more subpar coaching and some of those decisions in game. So I am much less intimidated to go up against those 2 teams with Jim Harbaugh as the head coach than I was with Brandon Staley as the head coach. The AFC North will definitely have their challenges. We've talked about that for sure. They have, possibly 3 playoff teams in that division. Like there's some very, very good quality football teams, but we also know that there is going to be some cannibalization there as well. We don't know what shape these teams are going to be in when the Chargers go up against those football teams. Also, I am not intimidated by Tampa Bay or New Orleans. I feel like the Chargers are better and should beat both of those teams. And like you've talked about many times, because the Chargers will be able, hopefully, to run the football a lot better, they should be able to travel in the cold weather and the elements a lot more effectively. So the New England game late in the year does not intimidate me nearly as much as it did in years past when they couldn't run the ball to save their life.
Yeah, and I think just saying, you usually split with Las Vegas is obvious. It's a year-to-year thing. I'm going to buy it, though, just like I've talked about before. I mean, I think to your point, you go back a couple of years ago to 2021 when the Chargers had a ridiculous stretch at the end of the season. Actually, it was 2022, and it was like the Colts, who had Jonathan Taylor, and the Chargers had a terrible run defense, right? They had the Super Bowl champion Rams that you had to play that year. And that stretch ended up not being nearly as tough because they played Nick Foles and the Colts, right? They played Baker Mayfield and the Rams. So you never know. And then there was games that season also that were much tougher than people thought they were going to be. I mean, I do think it sucks to get the AFC North, and you balance it out by getting the NFC South, which even if no matter how you kind of feel about those teams, I defy you to find a conference in the NFC that you'd want to play more, right? I mean, NFC West, the Cardinals should be better, Seahawks, 49ers, and Rams you have there. I don't think so. So to me, I think that it is harder just because it's like when you say 5th easiest schedule, you are going based on the 2023 results, and there's going to be teams this year that are much better than you think they are. I also think, though, that when you think of the schedule, you're also just looking at games and not looking at the fact that the Chargers travel the most. The fact that the Chargers will get 0 teams on short rest at all, right? They will not. They're not going to get a team that is coming off a Monday Night Football game or anything like that. They're going to face every team well-rested or with bonus rest. That's just how it played out for them. And I do think, for Tampa Bay and New Orleans, I'm not as scared as those teams, but I think they're both going to be solid. So what I think it comes down to is how good are the Chargers, right? Because you're right. I mean, AFC North has 3 teams that made the playoffs last year, and the Bengals weren't one of them because Joe Burrow was hurt. So, It's a really, really tough slate that they have. So I do think it is a little tougher than people think it is. I do think people are just using hey, they have the 5th easiest schedule this year as a huge point, but it is, at the end of the day, going to be much more about how good the Chargers are and beating the teams that they should beat on the schedule than how good the teams are that they're going to play, in my opinion. So let's get to this next question here, or buy or sell here, from Chris Saiz, who says, buy or sell, the Chargers will have a top 5 position group in the NFL, and that will result in either a top 10 offense or a top 10 defense. So it's an interesting one here because I do think the Chargers have a top 5 group, and it's the edge rushing group, who we've said, top to bottom, I think it's the best edge rushing group in the NFL.
Yeah.
The problem is I'm not ready to buy that it's going to actually make the Chargers a top 10 defense this year. I'm not ready to buy that yet. Much better. I would 100% agree with top 10. I'm not ready to buy that yet. Whereas on the other side, I don't think the Chargers have a top 5 offensive position group, but I still think that they can be a top 10 offense. So I think it's an interesting one here, David, but I don't think both are correlating with each other.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. I definitely feel like the Chargers have a top 5 edge group in the NFL. I think just depth-wise, top-end talent, like they're stacked. They're absolutely phenomenal. And I do expect the defense to be much better. I just don't know how much better. I have not seen this defense at all. We just haven't even seen them in pads yet, not even in training camp. So it's just hard to understand the effect that Jesse Minter and his defense and all his position coaches are going to have.
You could say the same thing about the offense too.
What's that?
I said you could say that about the offense too, though, right? Like we all want them to have a good running game and a complementary thing. We still haven't seen them in pads either.
Yeah, 100% for sure. But I have a lot of confidence in Justin Herbert just because I know who he is and what he is capable of. On offense, I do like the way that the tight end room has been built. I like the complement of different styles that they are able to bring to the table. And I do feel like the running back room is underrated as well. If they stay healthy, I think there's some very talented running backs in that room. But with that being said, they don't have a top 5 position group on offense, in my opinion. And I feel very confident they're going to have a top 10 defense or top 10 offense overall, but not a top 10 defense. I got to see it before I can believe it there.
I think with the position groups on offense, I just think if you were going to go with one, it would be quarterback. And I just think the other quarterbacks that are in the Justin Herbert range have better backups, like a Jake Browning in Joe Burrow's case, right? Carson Wentz behind Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen has Mitch Trubisky, right? I mean, just guys who have actually won games in the NFL, which over a 4-game stretch last year, Easton Stick couldn't do, right? And he gave the Bills a run for their money, also got blown out 63-21. At the same time, I just think that for those position groups, tight end and running back, it'd be hard to argue right now that either one of those positions has a for sure top 15 guy in the NFL in those rooms. Like if I went and told most people that Hayden Hurst is going to be a top 15 tight end this year, they'd probably laugh me out of the room. I'm bullish on him. I think he can play much better than he has, but he hasn't put up top 15 numbers since 2019 or somewhere around there. So, I think in the case of, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, health has obviously been a huge part of it, but those guys haven't been that either. There's a lot of running backs you're going to name before you get to the names Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. So, I just don't think that they have the top-end guys, top-end names that you would say, hey, that's a top 5 unit. And top 5 unit is really, really tough to do. I mean, the Chargers, to me, have one of them.
I'm not saying
it's an edge rushing group. Well, I mean, that's just what the question is, right? Do they have any top 5 position groups? So, either way, I mean, I think it's edge rusher and then everyone else. But let's get to this next one here from Drew Bannon, who asks, buy or sell, the Chargers will have 5 or 6 Pro Bowl and or All-Pro selections, with at least 2 being rookies. As always, love the show. Bolt up from your biggest military fan. Drew, I love you. I have to sell it. I think with the veterans, you could see 5 Pro Bowlers. Justin Herbert might have one of the toughest cases just because of the other quarterbacks he's going up against, multiple-time MVPs and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, not to include Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and the other great names. Now up-and-coming C.J. Stroud as well. That's tough. Yeah. But you also have guys who have done it. Derwin James, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack on the defensive side. Rashawn Slater should make a Pro Bowl. Darius Davis was an All-Pro last season. So I think I could see that the veteran side. I just don't see 2 rookies that are going to be Pro Bowlers or All-Pros as rookies.
Yeah, I think it's almost impossible to earn an All-Pro nod as a rookie.
All-rookie team, though, we could buy.
All-rookie team definitely will buy. Pro Bowl, it's just it's a popularity contest, and they haven't been in the league long enough to be able to garner the amount of votes necessary, so I'm going to sell it.
Yeah, and the Pro Bowl, an important part of it is coaches and players also vote for it, right?
Sure.
Fans do have a part of it. It's not as much of a popularity contest as it used to be. I think the bigger thing here, even when it comes back to the schedule, when we're talking about all this stuff, it's going to have a lot to do with how good the Chargers are. Go look at who had the most Pro Bowlers last year. Tell me how many wins those teams had.
A lot.
I promise you there's a strong correlation there. So I think a lot of it has to do with that. Lowest key of potential Pro Bowlers, maybe for another show, Asante Samuel Jr. That's one.
I said J.K. Dobbins, comeback player of the year alert.
Yeah, okay, comeback player of the year. That's a little crazy. I mean, for a running back, but and also like you have to have been really, really good at one point to be a great comeback. You know what I mean? That's
coming
another
back from
thing.
Injuries. You know,
sure, coming back, but it's also what is he coming back from? He's not coming back from a top 10 running back season he had before that. You know what I mean? So you're crazy. Asante Samuel Jr. though. He just plays a position where it's like, hey, if Asante Samuel Jr. has 7 or 8 picks this year,
for sure,
he's going to get the attention of the nation and the rest of the players from around the league. But we still have more great stuff to get in this buy or sell show, including the expectations for Joe Alt, comparing him to the great elite all-pro rookie season of the one and only Rashawn Slater, and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. I want to continue this Chargers buy or sell, getting the biggest storylines and overreactions. And thank you to everyone who contributed. And there was a lot of good ones. John Clark, just to name one of them that we weren't able to get to, that we'll hopefully get to on the next buy or sell show, or maybe even turn it into a question for Fan Mail Friday, because there was a lot of good stuff. But I do want to get into this Joe Alt and what his expectations are, and trying to compare him to Rashawn Slater, which is a huge comparison, and a huge shadow to kind of follow him. But I do want to make sure everyone is checking out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel, giving you access to all sports coverage all the time, but with the expertise of the Locked On local experts who cover their team every single day. It's the only place you're going to get anything like that. So make sure you guys go subscribe to Locked On Sports Today, first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel, available on YouTube and also on the Amazon Fire free TV channels app. So let's get to this one here from Anders Clausen, who asks, buy or sell, Joe Alt will allow as many sacks in his first 4 games as Rashawn Slater did in his entire rookie season. David, I'll let you go first on this one. Are you buying or selling that?
Yeah, obviously this is not fair. I mean, for a couple of reasons. Rashawn Slater is a true left tackle and got to start and play at left tackle in his rookie season. Okay, first and foremost. Joe Alt is a left tackle that is transitioning to right tackle in the NFL, where he's never played right tackle ever before in his life.
But you're going to buy it?
I am not going to buy it. Okay. I'm not going to buy it. And the reason why I am not going to buy it is because I feel like there's no way that the Chargers are going to put Joe Alt out there on an island against the Max Crosbys, the TJ Watts, the Jadeveon Clowneys. Like he's not going to see as many of those one-on-one on an island reps. They're going to have a tight end over there. They're going to have a running back over there to help him. Are there going to be times where he's going to have to do it? Of course. This is National Football League. You're going to have to do that. But that, coupled with their improvement of the running game, is going to allow them to pass protect a lot better, because the defense is going to actually have to think about what the Chargers are going to do on a down in, down out basis. All of those reasons are the reasons why I feel like he is not going to give up the amount of sacks that Rashawn Slater gave up in his rookie season, which was 4 all season long.
Yeah, I want to sell it, and for a lot of those reasons, and I think I will, but my fear is that I'm selling it just off of hopium, truly, like just because I really hope it doesn't happen, you know? Because like the thing is like he really is getting a murderer's row, right?
Yeah,
to get Max Crosby and TJ Watt, 2 dudes who combined for 33.5 sacks in 2023, is probably the most unfair thing that could happen to you as a rookie first-round pick that's trying to transition to the other side. It's
Go get him, bud.
You know? And Jadeveon Clowney like had a great year with the Ravens and a much better system than I expect the Carolina Panthers to have this year, but no slouch. I mean, shoot, I think you'll even get some of Chris Jones in that game. Like, Chris Jones doesn't only rush from the interior. They line that dude up all over the place. And, like, if I'm them, I'm testing it out, right? I'm testing out everybody, including Trey Pipkins, who's playing guard for the first time, right? If I'm Chris Jones as well. Yeah. But I don't think it's out of the question they're going to try to say, hey, let's see what this rookie has with Chris Jones, and let's test him that way. George Karlaftis, solid, whatever. But, like, those are the 4 names that would scare me the most. It could happen, and he could still have a good rookie season. I'll sell it. I mean, but seeing 2 or 3 sacks in that 4-game stretch would not surprise me at all, and I definitely wouldn't be, ringing the alarm bells.
Yeah, I agree.
At the same time, like, if it's not there, like, you could be looking at an even bigger number than that. So this is mostly based on just how good of a player I think Joe Alt is and what kind of athlete that I think he is. But, man, that's a tough stretch, and there's going to be some overreactions. There's going to be some buy or sell moments in those first 4 weeks, I promise you. And we'll have to try to calm our nerves, I'm sure. But this one is from Mingo, who's asking, are you buying or selling that Trey Pipkins is indeed one of the best 5 offensive linemen on the roster, or is Jim Harbaugh throwing confidence his way in hopes to get his mind right at right guard? David, are you buying or selling this?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, to be quite honest with you.
I think that I'm buying that Jim Harbaugh thinks it.
Yeah, I definitely am buying that. But honestly, the only other person you can really logically pair him up against is Jamari Sawyer. When you're talking about anyone who has any kind of consistent snaps to kind of measure.
Yeah, nobody else is pushing up for that.
Right. Yeah. So the thing is Trey Pipkins does have some really good football on tape, and it wasn't that long ago. Yeah, he gave up 9 sacks last year, but in 2022, in 586 pass blocking snaps, he only gave up 2 sacks and 28 pressures. That's fantastic, okay? That is really, really good, high-quality work at right tackle, and that's the play that got him pretty much that new contract, in my opinion. I mean, that was, fantastic work.
Of course it is.
And then, for Jamari Sawyer in, 2022, when he was playing left tackle to take over for Rashawn Slater after he got hurt, he gave up 5 sacks and 46 pressures and 669 pass blocking snaps. So I do feel like he is, one of the top 5 offensive linemen there. He has a lot to prove, though. I mean, he's never played guard ever before, and to my knowledge, at any level. So we'll have to see how he's able to transition there. But at least he's going to be next to, Bradley Bozeman, who has some positional flexibility. And also I feel like because they're going to run the ball a little bit more, that should be able to get him into the rhythm of the game and hopefully protect him a little bit as he's transitioning from tackle to guard.
Well, so let me say this. I'm absolutely buying that Trey Pipkins is a top 5 offensive lineman on this team. But it doesn't mean he's a top 2 guard.
No, you're right.
Right? And that's kind of the thing here, right? Because Jim Harbaugh is making a sweeping generalization that just because you're one of the best linemen on your team, that you should automatically be in the lineup, which just isn't true. And I don't think a 6'6" Trey Pipkins is probably playing guard at any time in his career. I would probably guess not, So most people wouldn't do that. And there's a reason for that. It doesn't mean he can't be better than Jamari Sawyer. I still would have liked to see the Chargers get some veteran interior offensive line, help that could push these guys.
Yeah.
And not just kind of put all your eggs in the Trey Pipkins at right guard basket, because we don't know what it looks like. And all the stats you bring up are great. All those were playing tackle that you brought up, right? And we're talking about who the starting right guard is going to be. So I think it is a decent question. I think that there's a good argument to be made that Trey Pipkins could have a top 3 offensive lineman on this team season, maybe even top 2 on this team season, potentially, right? We just don't know yet because we haven't seen it. So it's really, really hard. But I am bullish on this offensive line. Really quick, David, buy or sell this. The Chargers will allow less than 40 sacks in 2024 after giving up 43 last season.
Yeah, I'm buying it. The reason why I'm buying it is very simple. They're going to be able to run the ball a lot better, and that's going to have a huge impact on the amount of sacks that they give up, because they're not going to be in position where they're going to have to throw the ball nearly as much as they have the last couple of years.
I agree with you. And I think the other thing about last year, too, is you have to remember that 14 of those sacks were Easton Stick in 4+ games.
Yeah,
so it was not nearly, the escape artist that Justin Herbert is, which is why I think, it really, Justin Herbert's escapability is the one thing you have to factor into all this, because that's what's going to help Joe Alt. That's what helped Rashawn Slater. That's what helped the offensive line last year not give up 65 sacks instead of 43 sacks.
Real, or more.
In the first, 13 games of the season when Justin Herbert was out there. So if they could do that, if they could make that jump in last year's rankings of sacks, that would move them from 20th to 11th if they could get to 39, which is a huge, huge leap. And giving up sacks isn't everything, but you don't want to be the team that gives up 80 sacks in a season. And I do think it will be better because of the ability to run the football better.
Yeah, ask Andrew Luck.
Less pass attempts, we already said we think it's going to be Justin Herbert, the least of his career. But having to start a rookie affects this, right? You could have an outlier number. Last year, Trey Pipkins was the outlier number of 9, and that's a lot in part because he kind of got why he got scapegoated to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
On the right side. I don't think he's one of their worst offensive linemen. And he got scapegoated a little bit for sure, and the numbers look bad there. But there's a lot of just extenuating circumstances. But I do think the balanced offense, the ability to be less obvious in your passing situations is going to be a huge reason why that number goes down in 2024 and hopefully beyond, as this regime, similar to at least the Brandon Staley era, has committed to building the offensive line for Justin Herbert. Now 3 first-round picks since Rashawn Slater was taken in 2021. It's not very many years ago, right? That's 3 and 4 draft classes, if for those who are counting at home. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. We will be back with you guys on Friday as we continue these 3 shows a week, and we'll be getting your guys' opinions again because it is Fan Mail Friday. So hit us up at LockedOnLAC on Twitter. We will put a post out there or call into the voicemail line like a thief would do at 323-524-7924. You can also find the show and ask us questions on Instagram at Locked On Chargers or on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page as well. David Drogemeyer's DMs are always open at DroTalkSD, and you can find me on Twitter at DanTalkSports. Thank you guys so much for checking out today's show and continuing to give us one of the best off seasons we've ever had and continue to make us the best Chargers off-season podcast that there is. There's nobody putting out as much Chargers content, and we're hoping that you guys are enjoying it as we keep it as fresh as we possibly can and try to bring you the best guests possible. But that's going to wrap things up. We'll be back with you guys on Friday. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.